This, my friends, is the Yamaha Tenere 700 Extreme, a new flavour in the Tenere lineup for 2024, with some neat little tweaks that should make it the best of the bunch when it comes to off-roading. So is this now the Tenere to go for, or is someone like myself, a pretty average rider, better off with just the standard bike? Well, I'm here today at ABR Festival in the UK to take it for a spin out round the adventure trail to find out. But before we get on the trail, here's exactly where this new Extreme model fits into the Tenere lineup. When the Tenere 700 was first introduced back in 2019, we started with this base model with a slightly more off-road bias spec than the other adventure bikes on the market at that time. It's a super simple bike with a minimal amount of tech on board, and I think that's one of the reasons that owners really do seem to love them, along with the excellent CP2 parallel twin engine and a chassis that's rightly lauded for its ability off tarmac. Now at the moment in 2024, one of these will set you back just over £10,000. On top of that, you've got the rally model to consider, which has a few different accessories fitted, like the bash guard and the Akropovich accessory exhaust, as well as a fancy paint job, which I do think looks rather nice. Or for 2024, we've got the Explore model now, which is a bit more road biased. This one gets slightly lower suspension, a larger windscreen, a quick shifter on the upshift, and luggage racks all fitted as standard. But look, for those who want to take their off-roading a little more seriously, the World Raid was introduced in 2022 with upgraded suspension from KYB, more travel and ground clearance, a taller seat height, and a big 23-litre fuel tank with dual fillers as opposed to the 16 litres of the other Teneres. Now there is also a range-topping World Rally Edition, which is a bit like the World Raid but with even more fancy accessories, and the Extreme that we're riding today sort of fits between these two bikes and the rest of the lineup. You see, it's got the same suspension upgrade, so it should be better off-road than the standard bike, for example, but you don't get the larger capacity fuel tank, which I think, to be fair, a lot of riders don't need. On paper, this bike should be really very good, so what's it actually like to ride?
This is probably one of the most popular things about ABR, is the fact that they've got I think it's a good 20-mile off-road route, so lots of fun if you want to bring your own bike, but also there are plenty of manufacturers' bikes to borrow as well, and yeah, you can just razz around it all weekend, which is pretty cool. I mean, the fundamentals of the Tenere are always going to be pretty good. It's just a nice simple bike, easy to get on with, easy to ride off-road, and a nice engine as well, the CP2. And it's definitely on the sort of lighter end of the spectrum when it comes to the middleweight adventure bikes, which is always going to help as well. And yeah, for someone who's pretty average, like I say myself, it's confidence inspiring. That's what I've always thought about it. Now, I've ridden the standard bike back to back with a bike with this suspension before the World Raid when I went to the Adventure Centre in Wales, and I've got to say, you know, the base bike is really good, but it just gives you that extra bit of confidence, which I think is really valuable even if you're not particularly experienced. It's the quality of it and the control of it. It feels more able to take stuff on, more like you can just point the bike somewhere and it'll just ride up it without much fuss. And while you're not necessarily using all of that extra travel, and you're not necessarily doing the most hardcore off-road riding, it's the confidence it gives you, like I say, and that is super valuable when you're not, you know, frankly, an off-road god. Now, look, maybe I wouldn't have noticed it riding this bike standalone today, and it's been a few weeks since I last rode a Tenere. I had the Explore Edition to review a little while back, so you know, it might not be as noticeable with that gap between rides, but it's that proper back-to-back that I did at the Adventure Centre which really did convince me that it is a massively worthwhile upgrade. I think that's the big thing I'm taking from this bike as well. Like the other stuff, the rally seat does allow you to move around a little bit more easily back and forth. It's very flat, it's narrow as well, which again helps with agility on the bike, and also The tallness means you can go between sitting and standing as easily as possible. And then we've also got these lightweight titanium foot pegs, which I'm not so bothered about the weight. If you really did care about weight, you'd probably be riding an enduro bike. But they're nice and big, lots of surface area on the boot, nice and grippy, and so that's always going to be welcome as well. I've got to say, even the more advanced loops here for the more experienced off-road rider are definitely on the easy side. But I guess it does give you somewhere accessible to come just to have a go. And if you've got an adventure bike and you just want to dabble, you can take the easy loop, which is a lot of this stuff on the grass, just practicing your turns, and it's probably a really good way to get into it. Plus, you're not out on a green lane on your own somewhere, so if you do have a topple, loads of marshals, loads of other riders that are gonna help you pick your bike up and all that good stuff and make sure you're okay. So it is a brilliant event.
Thoroughly enjoyed that, but the question remains, is this the best Tenere 700 yet? Well look, like I said on the ride, the quality of the suspension makes a massive difference to this bike, and you've also got to consider that I think it's only 800 quid more than the standard T7. For me, it's an absolute no-brainer, and if you tried doing a similar sort of suspension upgrade yourself by buying it direct from a suspension manufacturer, you know it's going to be a lot more than 800 quid. Now there is also the option of the World Raid, which gets the same suspension. It's very similar, but the big difference is that that one gets the much larger long distance fuel tank, and that's going to give you quite a bit more range between stops. Thing is though, if you're not really doing that sort of riding, distance work, or you're not really going to remote places, then for me, you may as well save the money and the weight and go for this one. The only real downside to this bike, it has to be said, is the seat height, which comes in at 905 millimeters, so it really is quite tall. And if you're not someone who's comfortable with tall bikes, then this probably isn't going to feel that manageable. But what I will say is it's probably easier to get on with than it looks like it's going to be on paper, because it is a pretty slim bike in the waist with this rally seat. And so for someone who is comfortable getting over to one side and getting one foot down, I'm happy doing that. I'm 5'9" or 175 centimeters, so not particularly tall. You know, maybe don't rule it out straight away just based upon the spec sheet. If it does rule you out, then the standard bike is decent enough. The suspension's not bad on that bike. There's also the Tenere Explore, which is a little more road focused, and that sits even lower. But I guess if you do want to ride off-road, if you're taking that side of things more seriously, then you will miss out on that extra quality and travel that you get with this bike. And so for me, I think I'd probably be happy taking that taller seat height just for that boost in suspension performance. With all that in mind, if you are off-roading, considering all of the bikes in the lineup, this is realistically the one I'd go for. As always though, I'd love to know which bike you'd pick, so do let me know down in the comments below. And if you want to see a bit more detail on each of the Teneres in the lineup this year, then we've got a full guide on the screen now, so you can give it a watch if you haven't already. Also, do hit subscribe if you want to see more motorcycle reviews like this right here on MOTOBOB. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll catch you in the next one.